All right. All right. It's 2:03 Pacific Daylight Time. My name is Charles Jensen. I'm a Senior Vice President with Inland Securities Corporation. I live in Santa Monica, California. It looks like we're all, working from our home offices today, except for Mr. Wagner in Chicago. And we're here to do our conference call with you today. And I wanted to start off by introducing SuZanne Kennedy with First American. SuZanne.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is SuZanne Kennedy. I work for First American Exchange. We are a direct subsidiary of First American Title, and I work in Irvine, California, covering Orange County and Inland Empire. I've been in commercial real estate for the past 13 years, and I'm currently working with investors in the early stages of a 1031 exchange and focusing on, helping them get things started and get questions answered. So I can work with anyone throughout the United States, so happy to be of service. Christina, we'll turn it over to you.
Hi everybody, Christina Nielson. I am president of Corcapa 1031 Advisors, and we help clients reinvest. So once you've got the 1031 exchange, you're looking for what you're going to reinvest into so that you can defer your capital gains taxes. And that's what we specialize in, fractional real estate, primarily DSTs, some tenants in common. So you can have a successful exchange and defer all your taxes. We've been at this for 16 years. We've done over 500 exchanges, and we have clients all across the country in 27 states. Everybody nationwide is looking to avoid and defer taxes. It's a national thing. And I'll turn it back over to Charles.
All right, we're going to have, we thought it'd be a good idea just to review 1031 exchange very briefly here. And I want to bring on SuZanne to talk about the timelines, the real basics. Now, I hope this is not too much review for everyone, but you figure just a minute talking about exchanges and the reason you want to do it, right? I'll let SuZanne, if you want to say a couple words on that.
A 1031, oh, all right. A 1031 exchange is a tax deferral program that is set up for investors and business owners that allows them to defer the capital gains tax on the sale of their investment property or in a property that they use in a trade or a business. When it comes to an exchange, the timeline is the trickiest part. And so we just kind of wanted to review that quickly. Day one of your exchange is the day after escrow closes on your relinquished property. And day 45 is the first date that pops up that you will need to submit your identification form to your qualified intermediary listing the potential replacement properties. And then after day 45, you will have an additional 135 days to close on any replacement properties of your choosing. That being said, the total process is 180 days. A lot of people think they have 180 days after day 45, but that's incorrect. You've got 180 days total to complete the purchase of any replacement properties. One other thing I'll mention really quick is just there's no minimum or maximum on how much you can defer when it comes to a 1031 exchange, and anyone can do an exchange. So you can do an exchange as a partnership, an individual, and a trust. And also be advised that it is an unregulated industry, so anyone can facilitate a 1031 exchange. So make sure you have done your research on your intermediary and who is handling your funds. And then when you're looking for that replacement property, a DST is a great option, and we'll let Christina talk about that a little further.
Great. So we're going to briefly go over, before we get into what you really all got on this call for, is to hear about the 1031 and Mr. Dan Wagner. But really briefly, for those of you who don't know what a DST, a Delaware Statutory Trust, is, we're going to go over some of the benefits here for a few minutes so you understand it a little bit better. And feel free to reach out to any of us on this call after it to ask any questions or get any more details. So why do people look at 1031 exchanges and decide to go into a DST? So one of the major reasons is maybe you've had rental properties for decades and you're tired of the T's, the toilets, the tenants, the termites, the teenagers, and you want a life-changing exchange. So DSTs offer the opportunity to invest in a completely passive ownership structure. You don't have to do any management whatsoever. So it'll be a big turnaround from what you sold to what you buy. So that's the biggest reason people just choose to have a passive exchange. They want to defer their taxes, but they don't want to manage, and DSTs solve for that. You also get access to institutional quality properties. So if you're an exchanger with $500,000, you can't go out and buy a beautiful Class A luxury apartment complex like this one right behind me, right? But if you pool your money together, you and the other owners can have access to something like this, which might be a $50 million property, all professionally managed, on-site, property managers, leasing people, they handle it all for you, makes this kind of property in reach to a small mom and pop investor. The loans on DSTs are 100% non-recourse, so you do not have to guarantee the loan, which is a really wonderful thing, particularly in this environment where banks have become more aggressive and are trying to get recourse or partial recourse in the DST market. You will not have to guarantee a loan whatsoever. We also have lower minimum investments, so you can actually invest in a DST, which is as little as $100,000. So theoretically, if you had $1 million of exchange proceeds, you could buy 10 different DSTs. And that leads to the next option, which is diversification. So if you are looking at this COVID world and you're saying to yourself, what on earth do I invest in? What makes sense given this market? So when you work with someone like me, we're evaluating all the different options in the DST marketplace. And we want to find the properties that are in growing markets, that are succeeding through this COVID environment, that are maintaining their occupancy, maintaining their income. But then we take it a step further and we want to make sure we diversify. So you're in different asset classes, you're in different cities, maybe some have debt on them, some don't. So we really make the best possible mix for the current marketplace so that you have a really diversified portfolio. Estate planning purposes. So DSTs are great for estate planning because if you pass away during the ownership of your DST, then your spouse or your heirs get a step-up basis and value. Now, Dan might talk a little bit more about some worrisome parts of the Biden tax plan regarding step-up in basis, but right now we have a step-up in basis, and I hope that it continues. Insurance policy. So if you are, let's say you're here, I'm in Costa Mesa, California, that's where my office is. Let's say you have an exchange and you are set on purchasing an 8-unit apartment complex, also in Costa Mesa, but the lender's taking a long time. You want to complete your due diligence. You're not able to get in touch with all the tenants. You want to do the research and it's just moving too slowly and you're getting nervous. Let's identify a DST on line 2 and another DST on line 3 of your 3-property identification. And then if for some reason your 8-plex doesn't work out, you can pivot into one or both of those DSTs and complete your exchange and defer all your taxes. So I think that's a really great idea, and more people need to use DSTs in that way. Second to last is eliminating boot. So let's say you're like me and you don't want to pay 1 penny of extra tax to the federal and the state government, not 1 extra penny, because you don't like what they do with your tax money. So let's say your 8-plex, you have a $2 million exchange, your 8-plex is only going to use 1.674 million. So you have left over a little over 300,000. So you say, Christina, what DST can I buy? And then we could look at something like this one right here. And you could invest in that one down to the penny. So completely clear out your 1031 exchange account, defer 100% of the taxes if done timely and correctly, and have a fully complete exchange. So we love doing that with the DSTs. Eliminate every penny of boot. And then lastly is the swap to drop. So let's say that you, your accountant says, oh, you might as well pay the tax now because you're eventually going to pay it. Well, let's take a step back. If you continue to do 1031 exchanges and you defer, let's say maybe you're in a DST and you're 92 years old and you pass away. Well, then your spouse or your kids inherit that property at that step-up basis in value, and essentially the tax goes away, subject to estate tax limitations and all of that. But swap until you drop is one of the greatest tax tools that we have available to us as individual investors. So that's a real brief summary. If you want to know more, send us an email or send us a call, and I will send it back to Charles. Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you, Christina. And if you think about who's on the call today, you've got SuZanne, with First American Qualified Intermediary. You've got Christina Nielson, probably the top financial advisor in the nation on the Delaware Statutory Trust. And then myself, I work with the Delaware Statutory Trust. I'm a sponsor with Inland Real Estate Group, Inland Securities. And it's my pleasure to have on the call today, Dan Wagner. Now, I'm going to stop share so Dan can bring up his presentation. And I'm going to do a quick introduction of Dan. Dan Wagner is a Senior Vice President of Government Relations for the Inland Real Estate Group of companies. He's been a licensed real estate broker since 2004 and holds a Series 7 and Series 63 securities licenses. Wagner serves on numerous real estate industry and governmental boards and committees. He served as treasurer and president-elect of the Illinois Realtors, president of the Chicago Association of Realtors in 2016, and was the 2016 commercial liaison for the National Association of Realtors. Wagner was named 2017 Realtor of the Year by the Chicago Association of Realtors and received the 2017 Commercial Award from the National Association of Realtors. In 2018, he was inducted to the Hall of Fame for the Illinois Realtors and National Association of Realtors. Wagner is also a commissioner of the DuPage Airport Authority and serves as chairman of the Capital Development Committee. Wagner is the chairman of the Greater Oak Brook Chamber of Commerce and was installed as the secretary of the Illinois Chamber of Commerce in 2020. Additionally, he serves as the trustee for the Conservation Foundation. And Dan is a big fighter for 1031 exchanges in Washington, D.C., probably one of the biggest. Literally, we were both in Washington, D.C. at the same time, supporting 1031 exchange, meeting with different congressmen and congresswomen. We ran into each other in the Cannon Hall building in the halls of Congress, and that's how much Dan Wagner is in D.C. So without further ado, here's Dan Wagner, Senior VP, Government Relations with Inland Real Estate Group.
Hey, thank you, Charles, and thank you, everybody. It's good to be talking to you from Oak Brook, Illinois, the world headquarters for the Inland Real Estate Group. You have some top-level folks on this call, and I'm honored to be part of this august group of people. Christina Nielson, you are a rock star. Obviously, Charles, you know you're my brother, and I love you. And SuZanne Kennedy, you're great. So this is a group of folks that know what they're talking about, which is terrific. I wanted to get into this whole concept of what's going on with the 1031 exchange, and Inland is the 1031 leader. So I was going to talk a little bit about our history just to give you a perspective of where I'm coming from. These are the four founders of Inland. Inland's been in business for about 53 years. There's Dan Goodwin in the gray suit. These guys all come from nothing. They were Chicago public school teachers. And they literally, Mr. Goodwin's grandmother was homeless. His dad worked in a machine tool shop, and he lived in an apartment with two brothers living on pull-out couches, and they really came from nothing. Bob Parks, a guy whose dad was a janitor. Bob's guy, our dad drove around to different gas stations selling windshield wiper blades, and Joe Cassenza's dad was a barber. So these four teachers created Inland because the summers they started getting money from other Chicago public school teachers, and they were able to grow Inland, and they left teaching. And I think as of today, we purchased close to $48 billion worth of commercial real estate in every state except Alaska. Not a lot of people in Alaska. So we got a lot of caribou though. So this kind of gives you a perspective of Inland. We're the owner and operator of institutional quality real estate, really big company, about 1,100 employees. This gives you a perspective. We have our Inland Real Estate Investment Corporation. We do these private placements, our Delaware Statutory Trust. We do non-traded REITs. We have money that we invest for institutional capital, for pension funds. We have a big bridge lending company. We have a development company that builds up from the ground. We usually have about $250 million in the ground anywhere in the country at all times. We have about, we have a bank, it's about $1.3 billion. We have a home mortgage company that does about $600 million. And we have a PACE bond company as well. So we're a very, very big company, and we put all that to use for our investors with creating this thing called the 1031 Delaware Statutory Trust. But one of the things I was going to highlight to you, why the 1031, why is Inland, why are we so interested in the 1031? Well, this is our history. The 1031 is really part and parcel of who we are. Basically, these teachers, most ethical people you ever meet, they got up to 42,000 apartments in Chicago, and they did that through limited partnerships. In the 80s, when the tax laws changed, some of the limited partnerships were underwater. So these teachers would not allow any of their past teachers, principals, folks, family, friends to go bankrupt. So what they did is they put all their money back in the company, and they went to Walmart. They said, hey, Walmart, can we do sale leasebacks with you? And Walmart said, sure, go ahead. And so Inland became the largest landlord to Walmart. And at the same time, they went to Treasury and they said, hey, Treasury, can we 1031 exchange these people that are in underwater investments and 1031 them into fractional share interests of these Walmarts? They're like, well, nobody's really done that before, but okay, you want to go do it? Sure. Well, and that kind of, it's a wonderful life story, you know, helping people be ethical. That zoomed Inland to the big leagues, and that's where we got, you know, really our growth came from, which is pretty cool for what it highlights about ethics. But one of the things that this did, the 1031 exchange, obviously, the teachers, Mr. Goodwin saw this as a great opportunity. He's like, boy, this is a really great way for people to invest. And so they started doing it through TICs, tenant in common. And then they recognized that this is probably not the best way to do it. And so they created, the Inland created the Delaware Statutory Trust 1031 like-kind exchange. So Inland, we were the founders of it. And we're very proud of that. The thing, why I exist, why my position exists, because it's really unusual in a company like ours. The teachers recognized that they didn't want to be surprised again by tax law changes, because obviously that was a major deal for their investors. So they wanted to know, kind of have a canary in the coal mine, so to speak, and that's kind of me. I'm the guy who is there to evaluate and assess what's going on. Well, and we're inland, so we, you know, while we're a big company, there's still, it's a big country with lots of issues. So Dan Goodwin, who's our chairman, is really smart, and he identified the best way that we can do this process of kind of evaluating what's going on in Washington, in the states, at the local level, is by being involved in associations. So Inland is super involved with all these different organizations. And when people ask me, well, Dan, exactly what do you do? I tell everybody I'm kind of the Tom Sawyer of Inland. I get all of our associations to paint the fence for us at the local, state, national level. So like locally, I'm the chairman of the Oak Brook Chamber of Commerce. Our goal is to always keep taxes low. And we have Brookfield owns one of the biggest malls here, and that provides all of the money to need for the village to run. So there's no property tax in Oak Brook for city services, which is terrific. So again, the state, we try to work to make sure the state's a good place to be. Illinois, we might not have done the best of jobs because we've had 2 governors in jail at once before. So Illinois is a weird place. But really the national levels, and that's what you're interested in, and that's what I'm here to talk about, is what's going on at the national level and why are we involved in all these organizations. So, so the 1031 like-kind exchange has been a part of our tax code since 1921. And that's a really big deal. And so we recognize the fact that if we're going to effectuate, you know, change and support of this, we want to continue to keep this running strong, we have to work with some really top-notch organizations. So Inland's involved with the National Association of Realtors. You might say, well, that's a residential organization. Well, it's one of the most powerful organizations in Washington. It has 1,400,000 members. And we were able to really get the National Association of Realtors. We work with them all the time. And they were able to get over 10,000 realtors walking Capitol Hill the last time and, for the 2017 tax reform. That's when they were looking at getting rid of the 1031 as well. And we're with a whole group of folks, we're able to save it. But we, again, had over 10,000 realtors walking Capitol Hill. Now, the 1031 went away for personal property. Because they have 100% expensing for personal property. But the National Association of Realtors are super powerful. The other big powerhouse in Washington is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And the U.S. Chamber has been phenomenal to work with and be partners. And so they're kind of between the U.S. Chamber and the National Association of Realtors, those are kind of like the 800-pound gorillas that we have on our side, which we're very grateful. And then the other organizations I'll highlight, we have the National Association of Real Estate Investment Trusts. They're super involved with protecting the 1031 as well. The International Council of Shopping Centers, ICSC, 1031 is obviously important for shopping centers to be able to reposition. The Institute for Portfolio Alternatives, and Inland, the IPA, the folks that are familiar with that organization, Inland was one of the, at the first meeting of the IPA 35 years ago. And then ADISA, Inland actually created. It was first the Tenant and Common Association, and it turned to ADISA. And then the group that I call the Jedi Council of the 1031 Exchange, every qualified intermediary loves being a part of the Federation of Exchange Accommodators. So this is all the qualified intermediaries. And they know everything there is to know about the 1031 exchange. And I kind of highlight that really all the other organizations, if you look at what they call an egg and bacon breakfast, all the other organizations are kind of like the chicken, where they're concerned about the 1031, but the FEA is kind of like the pig, where they're really dedicated for it, because they're the bacon. They want to make sure the sucker stays around. It's important for people to understand why these organizations are all working together to save the 1031, and that's because we all came together, and Inland helped pay for these studies, but there's a variety of other organizations that did as well, and all these organizations did. But during the last tax reform, the Ernst & Young, they did a macroeconomic study, and then Ling and Petrova are professors that did a microeconomic study of the 1031. And it's super important. They were able to quantify how the 1031 impacts our economy and our world. And the other group that's not on here that we're part of is the Real Estate Roundtable. It's kind of like the Knights of the Round Table. They have all the different groups that are interested in the 1031. And so a couple of different things that we are able to highlight to people is to be able to say that the 1031 has been in the tax code for, like I said, 100 years, and it's very important to us all. But before I go into that, I wanted to highlight, so what's going on now with the 1031? Why are we concerned about it possibly going away? So politics is everything, and one of the things that's happened is that in February, the Biden campaign sent to the Brookings Institute their version of what they believe tax reform should be if they were to be, if Biden were to become president. And so that report was pre-COVID. So they put together this idea, and I'll go over some of these things that they want to do. So the Biden campaign said that they want to eliminate the 1031 like-kind exchange. They want to eliminate the stepped up in basis of assets and tax unrealized capital gains at death. They want to increase the capital gains tax to 39.6%. And again, President Trump doesn't want to do any of that stuff. Actually, he wants to reduce capital gains taxes to 15%. So there's a big stark difference in this election. And so when you talk about campaigns, you clearly, I'm not saying to vote for this person or vote for that person, but what I'm doing now is that I'm educating Democrat leaders that are in the House and the Senate on Zoom calls, explaining why the 1031 is important. And so what I'm doing is I'm explaining these studies that have been done. The Ling Petrova has been updated, and so has the Ernst & Young study. Those studies, the new updated studies, should be coming out pretty soon. But what we're able to highlight, and again, it's not just me, but I'm working with the Federation of Exchange Accommodators, with IPA, and different groups. We're able to talk about how the 1031 is impactful to society. So one of the things that we were able to show is that when 1031 is done, that basically everybody that does a 1031 invests about 31 to 36% more into their property. And that's a big synergistic aspect to the local economies where the 1031 is done. So the idea is that buyers actually, they invest or they remodel, and owners just maintain. And so when you have people investing and the synergy involved with that, you have obviously your sale of the property, the realtor gets a commission, the lawyers, the title insurance, all the way down the line, the appraisers, the surveyors, but then you get into the people that are the union contractors, the people that are changing out the new lights and new HVAC, all that kind of stuff. So about 30 jobs were identified that get created when a 1031 exchange is done. That's a really big deal. And so taxes, while some people say, oh my gosh, the taxes are deferred, so there's no money going to the government, that's not the case, because you have all these people that are actually making income tax. They're going to be paying income tax to Uncle Sam when they do this work. The other thing is you have all of the local governments, the local and state, are getting their transfer taxes. So that's a really big deal. The other thing that was identified is that if you got rid of the 1031, you would not have people selling. It would basically put a lock on properties because people are not going to want to sell if they have to pay the tax. So locking down the GDP is what would end up happening. You would stifle the growth of the economy. And if this was clearly pre-COVID, you don't want to get rid of the 1031 because obviously our economy has been clicking along with backfiring because of the COVID. But if you got rid of the 1031, it would absolutely seize up the engine. And that can't happen. We want to make sure to wake everybody up about that. And this proposal, like I highlighted when it was sent to the Brookings Institute, was before COVID. So clearly we want to wake everybody up about it. And then a couple other points to make is that some of the people we've been on the call, they say, well, you deferred taxes. Does that mean the taxes are never paid? No, on the contrary, they found out with 1031s that about 88% of 1031s eventually end up in a taxable event. About 12% does not, but it's clearly one of the things that grows the economy has been the 1031 for over 100 years. The other interesting aspect of all this is that there's other groups that are besides the real estate groups, that are very interested in this, and that would be the CPAs, because they see the importance of it, and also the tax lawyers, they understand it. And another group where the 1031 is very, very important are farmers. Everybody knows farmers are cash poor and dirt rich. And so farmers, they have a really big vested interest in the 1031 because this is kind of like this is the biggest tool they use in order to move properties in and out and to grow their wonderful farms and things like that. The other aspect to farmers is going to be conservation. So inland, I represent Mr. Goodwin in a lot of places. And Mr. Goodwin is very much into conservation, and I'm on the Conservation Foundation in the Chicagoland area, where we protect open space and rivers and streams. And one of the things that I found, and we found, is that conservation groups are really big time into 1031s. The reason why is that they buy farmland, the different wildlife funds and things like that around the country. They go to farmers that are on by the Mississippi River, by wetlands, by marshes, and they say, hey, we need to buy this land here. And the only way a farmer is going to sell is if they don't have to pay the capital gain. So they are able to do a 1031 into a conservation easement. And that land is set aside because of the runoff from the farms and other roads and other things. They want the pollutants to filter through natural plantings. And that helps get rid of a lot of the, the different poisons and things like that could go into the streams and to the rivers. So you see there's so many different aspects to the 1031 exchange that people don't necessarily think about. They're like, wow, I didn't know that. Because some folks try to highlight that this is just for fat cats and this is a way for us to pay for stuff. Well, every time that politicians think about this as a way to pay for something, once they start uncovering all these aspects, they start waking up to it. We had a congressman up by Napa Valley who we spoke to, and we verified through qualified intermediaries that in last year, there were, for whatever reason, there were $6 billion worth of 1031s in that person's area. We also talked to an elected official last night from Pennsylvania, and there were $3 billion in that area. So it's across the board, the 1031s, the elected officials weren't necessarily aware of this. So obviously, candidate Biden has a lot of ideas. One of his ideas is to be able to have money for free healthcare and free child care. And while we're not saying that that's a bad idea, we're just saying that we want to let everybody know that this shouldn't be done by getting rid of the 1031 exchange. So the natural question that comes up is, so Dan, in your experience, what's going to happen on November 3rd? Well, I want to tell you, my crystal ball has been broken. I have no idea what's going to happen on November 3rd. I will tell you that, again, I'm involved in all these organizations, and they all have lobbyists and political action committees. So the people inside the Beltway in Washington, they're the ones that highlight that they believe all the polling, and they believe that candidate Biden, Vice President Biden, is going to become the next president. And they think that the Senate will become Democrat and the House will even become more Democrat. So that's like basically a huge blue wave. People outside the Beltway, they kind of think that the House will remain Democrat. They think the Senate will remain Republican, but by one vote, it'll be very close. And they think that Trump will win. So your guess is as good as mine. So what I'm doing is I'm educating Democrats all over the place to try to preempt if this were to be a blue wave, and that's what Inland's trying to do. And I'm not into telling people who to vote for. What I'm doing is just educating people, and so I'm educating Democrats. But ultimately, if Vice President Biden has said that this is going to be one of his #1 things to do when he wins is to get rid of the 1031 exchange. And hopefully we can talk him out of it and talk different elected officials out of it. But if he does move forward with that, if there's a blue wave, then what we're looking at is the possibility of the law being changed. So going back to Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes a law. I'm just a bill, on Capitol Hill. How it works is that the House Ways and Means Committee is the organization that first takes up the tax reform and would look at getting rid of the 1031. And then from the House Ways and Means, it goes to the Senate Finance Committee. And then the Senate Finance Committee does their thing. Then it gets sent back, and both houses have to, both chambers concur. And then if they pass it, then it goes to the president to sign into a law. I honestly, when people ask me, well, when would that happen? I don't think it would happen until September of 2021. But if he wants to fast track it, then I could be wrong. But there's such a large group of organizations that support the 1031. We're not going to go quietly in the night. We're going to be going all the way to the very last breath to fight for the 1031. And it's been a part of our tax code for 100 years, and we have incredible arguments. And it's going to be hard to look at those and throw them aside. But that being said, we'll see what happens. I know that if the Senate were to become Democrat, Senator Wyden from Oregon would take over as chair of the committee, and the senator said that he wants to also mark-to-market securities. So he wants to be able to raise taxes by basically having you pay income tax on your unrealized gains every year. So every year you'd have to evaluate your portfolios, and you'd have to pay tax on the unrealized gain. So there's a lot of ideas that are kind of surprising to me, but that's kind of what's out there right now. And I'm not saying who to vote for, who not to vote for. I'm talking to Democrats. I've talked to probably 20 so far, different leaders around the country, and we've had really good people to talk with. They've understood what's going on, and some of them obviously, all of them support Biden, and all of them, some of them have said, well, we really like giving away free health care, we really like free child care. What's your alternative? So if we don't get rid of the 1031, what should we get rid of? Well, I'm not going to, cut off my arm to spite my face. I'm just saying, hey, if you want the economy to do well under your leadership, you need to keep the 1031. And that's been true, as long as we've had this for 100 years. So those are some of the kind of the key things. But one of the other aspects of COVID to understand is the repositioning of properties. So when you have blight in an area, or you have the issue of the Amazon is just, everybody's buying stuff from Amazon. There's a lot of empty storefronts. If you're going to reposition stuff, the 1031 is just such a vital tool for people to be able to do that. And if you're going to redo, your apartment complex, or you're going to make something in a multifamily, and that could be an empty mall, that 1031 is going to be just such an important part of it. So hopefully, from a COVID standpoint as well, like I said, 1031 needs to exist no matter what. But from a COVID standpoint, when they talk about doing stimulus packages that are trillions, well, this whole idea of doing the 1031, it's only like $50 billion over 10 years or something like that. So but they're looking at stuff to pay for things, but it really would do bad things to our economy. So those are some of the aspects of what we're doing at Inland. And again, we're not going to stop until this matter is put away. And we believe that through all these organizations, that we're going to have a really good discussion. And like I said, the realtors, one of the cool things they do is they have a realtor attached to every member of Congress. So it's one of the few very bipartisan organizations where you have very liberal, very conservative folks, and they all agree on private property rights. And so in the local districts, the realtors really matter to these elected officials, especially for votes. And they also do a lot with campaign donations. Like this is my PAC pin for the National Association of Realtors. This means I've donated over $25,000 to the realtors. And there's realtors all over the country that donate that. This is for the Political Action Committee. So the kind of money they're able to put into different races is a really big deal. And U.S. Chamber and all these organizations, it's a really big deal of what they do. And the idea that we're not going to do everything we can to protect it is crazy. So, and we're going to be doing that. So I know I've talked maybe a little bit longer than I'm supposed to, Charles, but those are some of the top key things that I wanted to highlight to you guys, and try to be as quick as I could. But I got to tell you, it is so much fun working for these 4 teachers. Dan Goodwin is one of the most frugal people you ever meet in your life. He's become my second dad. I have triplets plus 1, and he's helped me take care of them. I have a son with autism too, so he's been very, very generous in the different therapies we've done. But they're just salt of the earth people. I know Mr. Goodwin, he drives a Lexus. It's 20 plus years old. it's the truth. And I go fishing with him every year to Minnesota, and we have a good time. But we stay at just regular old places and nothing fancy, but it's all good stuff. So our world of Inland is pretty much, we're open book. We're pretty transparent. This is who we are. And I'm honored to be on this call with you today. And you got some of the best people in the business on this call who know how to do this stuff. So I'm sure Christina and Charles, SuZanne, you guys all have experienced how the 1031 helps people. One of the things I'll challenge everybody on this call, because some people really believe in the 1031 too. And they say, hey, Dan, what can I do to help save the 1031? Well, if we were in a room right now, I'd say, how many people, raise your hand if you know your congressman. And there's usually not a lot of hands that go up. So what I challenge you to do is to find out who your congressman is and your U.S. senators are. And you have to contact their offices and let them know. If you think the 1031 is a good thing, let them know that. If you want to learn who your congressman is, and plus you want to get some more really in-depth detail information about these studies and some talking points, you can go to the Federation of Exchange Accommodators website, or just go to www.1031, and that website has an advocacy section, and you can put your home address in there, and it'll automatically populate with who your congressman is and senators are, and it'll actually draft an email, and you can press send, and it'll shoot an email to them saying why you think the 1031 is important. But if you go to that website, the Federation of Exchange Accommodators, you can see their logo. That's what I suggest you can do. But having a personal relationship, I mean, Charles knows a lot of elected officials. And like I said, he said earlier, he was walking Capitol Hill and knocking on doors, and we'll be doing the same thing. COVID makes it a little different. Obviously, we're doing a lot of Zoom stuff, but talking to elected officials is huge, and that personal experience is a big deal. I'll tell you a story. When we were talking about the 1031 last last tax reform, I found out that the average age of a Hill person is about 22 years old. and they churn through those positions pretty quickly. So a lot of folks are pretty young. They don't know about real estate, or if they know about real estate, they know that their parents lost their home in the last recession. And so real estate is not considered a big positive. So it's really having to train them about what real estate is and everything. But one of the things that happened is that I was knocking on the door, and I'm like, hey, I'm here for to talk about the 1031. And the guy looked at his watch and said, 1031? No, it's 11 o'clock. So it's interesting because really in Congress, you're basically drinking from the fire hose. There's a cajillion different issues every day, from, world peace to, different issues with Medicare and all. I mean, just, you can name it, energy, anything. And so I'm here to talk about the 1031. The window of paying attention is difficult. So you got to really get in there and get your information in there. But if you're a constituent that votes in the district, you are one of the most important people in the world to your member of Congress and to your senator. So please consider getting to know them, and look it up, the Federation of Exchange Accommodators website, and it'll get you more information about how to advocate for this very important thing in our tax code, which is the 1031 exchange. So Charles, are there any questions you want me to answer?
Yeah, we have some questions coming in, and just so everyone knows, there's a little Q&A box either at the bottom or your top of your screen. We toggle over, you'll have a little box that pops up and it says Q&A. So go ahead and ask your questions through the Q&A box. And also, I'm going to put out all of our contact information through the chat feature. So if you want to capture all of our emails and cell phone numbers, take a look at the chat feature. You'll see the contact info. And in questions and answer, please ask through the Q&A box. So we got our first question. And SuZanne, I think this one's going to go to you. It says, what about selling a home after 3 years? Will they start taxing that transaction?
I believe you're taxed immediately when you sell, instead of doing a 1031 exchange. So you would be taxed for the year of the sale of the home, and taxes would be due at that time.
Do you want to talk about the 2-year limit, holding it for 2 years? Maybe they're asking that too. I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, holding the
yeah, holding property for 2 years.
Before they sell, or before
Right.
they do an exchange.
Exactly.
So there's really no written time that you're supposed to hold a property before you do an exchange or sell the property. However, the IRS does like to see you hold a property for 2 years before exchanging into another property. However, there are always extenuating circumstances. So we always just advise people to work with your CPA, as they are the ones that are filing your tax return, to make sure that they're comfortable with when you're moving forward and completing another exchange or selling the property.
Excellent. Next question. This is from Ken. And he was talking about this only applies to someone who makes $400,000 or more, correct? So does that include the corporations?
In regards to the $400,000, that's correct. But corporations, I'll tell you what the plan is. For pass-through, so they're going to, Biden wants to repeal the 20% deduction for pass-through business income, and Trump wants to extend it 20% deduction. He wants to keep that till 2025. For corporate tax, Biden wants to increase the corporate income tax rate to from 21 to 28%, and Trump wants to keep it the same.
Okay, I'll keep going down here. And again, if we don't answer your
follow up real quick on that, Dan, just in case they're asking, because I think what they're saying, let's say that you have your rental property, right? And either your corporation, your C Corp, your S Corp, what have you, doesn't have 400,000 of income. So can the corporation still do a 1031 exchange?
No, they're going to eliminate it.
Okay. So people that have entities and or under 400,000 of income need to think about possibly restructuring. This could lead to a whole lot of legal work for our lawyer friends out there, right? Doing different tricks and strategies. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
And by the way, too, if we don't answer your question well enough, if we don't get the full answer out that you need, go ahead and ask it, again, or follow up on your questions. Karen is asking, is Biden still proposing to totally eliminate 1031 exchanges or in some way partially tied to income level?
No, he wants to get rid of the 1031 exchange, eliminate it totally. He wants to also get rid of the stepped up in basis. So yeah, he wants to get rid of it totally. He does have, throughout his plan, there is a section that talks about $400,000 that would be impacted. And there's a couple other ones for some how much money you make a year, but really in effect, the 1031 would be gone.
I hope I'm, so Dan, that's, as I was reading through it, that's really a watershed piece of information. So I really thought that if your AGI, your adjusted gross income, was under 400,000, that you would still be eligible for an exchange. But I think what you're saying is there's some nuances within his tax plan, but it certainly reads, someone could read his tax plan currently and it assume there will not be a 1031, even if you're under 400,000 of income.
Right.
Wow. Wow.
Yep.
I had also read it the way that you just stated it, Christina, that it was anyone under 400,000 would still be eligible to do an exchange.
The Federation of Exchange Accommodators, they said that that it would basically be gone. There's no way that you could do that and it would be gone, and he's going to repeal it. But all this stuff is nuanced because there's, things change all the time and they could put something out. But the latest thing he put out was to repeal the 1031 and totally.
Do you want to maybe touch on the step up in basis? Some people might not be familiar with that, and that would be a huge loss. And that's one of the main things that I talk to people about, and that is a big reason why people exchange, is so that they can leave that property to their children or to their heirs. And to completely take that away would diminish the whole process of.
Yes.
So a step up in basis, do you want me to just kind of explain what that is in case people out there don't know? So basically, a lot of people do a 1031 exchange and they continue to exchange until they pass away because they know they're going to leave the property to their heirs. And what happens is, even if this investor has exchanged over the last 20 years and has been able to defer taxes over this many years, when they leave this property to their heir, the heir will receive the property at market value on the day of their death. And any previous capital gains that has been deferred is forgotten. And that's huge. So, to take that away and to have that, their death be a taxable event would be very discouraging for a lot of investors to continue doing 1031 exchanges. So that's what's called a step up in basis. And it's, like I say, a big reason why a lot of people do 1031 exchanges.
We have another question for Dan here, talking about if the 1031 exchange did go away, would they most likely grandfather in people that have done exchanges already?
Well, that's the $1 million question. That's what we hope. That's what we believe will happen. But they can do whatever they want.
So is it safe to say it's probably better to do an exchange now if you're thinking about it?
Yes.
Okay.
Because you just don't know what's going to happen. If you want the safe bet, you want to get it done.
All right. Someone's asking, what is the specific address to write our congressman? Dan, do you know a website where you can locate all the congressmen and women of the country?
The Federation of Exchange Accommodators. Go to that. And then type in it'll have under advocacy, it'll go to that tab, and then it'll take you to a site that you can type in your home address and it'll tell you who your congressman is.
And what's that full address for the Federation of Accommodators?
Federation of Exchange Accommodators.com.
Federation of Exchange Accommodators.com. Got it. And by the way, too, as we're speaking, again, if you go to the chat feature, you will see the contact information for everyone on this phone call, all of our emails, our phone numbers. Maybe take a picture with your phone if you want to kind of save this information, remember it. Again, on the chat feature, you get the contact information for everyone on the call today. Let's see. Next question. Ken says, I think Christina Nielson is correct. Where can we read about this online? About is it the 400,000 I think we're talking about, Ken?
Right. I think there's the interpretation that if you're under the 400,000 of income, that you can still exchange. How can we get more clarification on that? Because I think that more people would say call their congressperson and get more involved if it's a true and complete elimination versus.
So I have the real estate roundtable is a good place to go because they just did this yesterday, September 21st of 2020. It highlights under real estate provisions, eliminate ability to defer capital gains through like-kind exchanges. It talks about repealing the current ability of taxpayers earning less than $150,000 a year to deduct up to $25,000 in real estate losses, notwithstanding passive loss rules. But there's a whole bunch of, there's all these different sections of what could happen with tax. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm a political guy. So, I'm not going to tell you that this is exactly, but I'm going off of what the Real Estate Roundtable put together, that they just put together. So I know that, the information that I just got yet, the 21st of September, it says he's going to take it away. So if you go to the Real Estate Roundtable and look under 1031 exchanges, it'll have this white paper there and it'll explain it.
I appreciate that. I don't think people are aware of that, but it's ebbing and flowing, right? When a presidential candidate makes their tax proposals, it's just their initial proposals, and then it's, ebbing and flowing.
Yes. Christina, thank you. Because absolutely, it's not, this is still, we have an election to go through, and after the election, if Vice President Biden wins, he's going to be inaugurated in January, and then a proposal is put forward through the House Ways and Means Committee, and the House Ways and Means Committee, that's where we're going to find out for sure what's going to happen. This is a proposal they put together, and some proposals could say that 400,000, others don't. The latest one that we just got hot off the presses from the Real Estate Roundtable is they said they're going to eliminate the 1031 exchange. So it's politics. So things are very fluid, and you need to go and do your own research, but that's the latest that we got.
On that note, Dan, we're getting a question from Adam. He's asking, why not keep the exchange after death and don't allow the step up? I guess anyone can answer that one. Why not keep the exchange after death and don't allow the step up?
Why do they want to make money? They want to get money for healthcare and for free childcare. So it's a way to get money. They want to try to raise revenues to pay for things. So that's why they want to get rid of it. It's to make money for their programs.
Next question. Does a 1031 currently allow for personal primary residences to be transferred into another personal primary residence?
SuZanne?
No, you're not. Your primary residence is not eligible for 1031 treatment, as you already will receive an exclusion of $250,000 for a single person or $500,000 for a married couple.
Thank you. Got a question here. For a property that was purchased via 1031 exchange in a sole proprietorship, can it be transferred to a living trust without creating a taxable event? Or is there another vehicle to do so? Christine, you want to do that one?
Sure. Essentially, so it depends if we're dealing with the 400,000 income rule or not, right? But technically, clients all the time, as they're getting older, their tax and legal advisors are saying, hey, put your residence that might be in your personal names, put it into your trust so it doesn't have to go through probate. Or if it was purchased through a 1031 as an individual, 1 to 2 years after the purchase, you could probably put it into a trust. You might even be able to put it in a trust right away if it has the same tax ID number. Check with your tax advisor. But I don't think this helps us sidestep the Biden 1031 because that's not differentiating between a trust or a sole proprietor or an LLC or what have you, if the 1031 is eliminated, then all taxes will be realized once you sell. So let us know if we need to explain that one further.
Right. Any other questions, please write them into the Q&A box. I want to see if we're missing any questions here.
We have one asking a little bit more about the shocking statement that unrealized gains on stocks. I mean, that's just,
yes.
Dan, I mean, that just is so unprecedented. If you don't have the sale to generate the revenue to then pay the taxes, how do they expect people to come up with the tax revenue that's due? Are they going to have to sell some stocks just to pay what's due?
Yep. Yes. Yes. And again, this stuff is just in Washington. The lobbyists know this stuff. Nothing is, there's no bill to look at because they haven't taken over yet. But that's what just Google Senator Wyden and the Senate Finance Committee, what he wants to do in the future, and he puts it out there. So that's what you can take a look at. It's I don't even understand it. So and obviously there's other rumors that happen, and I don't believe, like they talked about how they want to possibly tax your property, like your home. If your home grows in value, you get taxed on that. But I don't think that's real. But the one about doing stepped up in basis for your portfolio for stocks, that's definitely a plan that Wyden wants to do. Now, he's just one person, but he would be the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, which is a big deal. But that doesn't mean it will happen. It just is an idea that one elected official had. So it's not saying that the Democrat Party is for that, but this senator, who would be in a very important position, has talked about wanting to do that. And so if you Google Senator Wyden and stepped up and get rid of the what I just said, I'm getting older. My mind wanders.
We have a question from Maggie. She's saying, was it said that the rollback of the step up in basis could be retroactive and dissolve from my case 2 years ago?
No, they don't. No, it would not get into that.
Grandfathered in, most likely.
Real quick, I went on I looked up Federation of Exchange Accommodators for those who wanted to go on, and one of the easiest ways to get there is 1031.org, 1031.org, and then you'll see about a third of the way down the page, they are saying, recent federal tax reform proposals threaten Section 1031. See how you can help, and there's a website, which we can type into the chat bar there, 1031taxreform.com. And so that may be another way to get to your congressperson so that you can email them and call them and tell them your concern. And just to share my personal concern about this is that when we're, in our current economic environment where we're dealing with the slowdown of COVID, and we already have that to contend with. And then if we do something to eliminate 1031 exchanges, which far less people would be willing to sell their properties, and presumably prices could go down, it just seems really unwise to layer this new tax policy on top of a COVID slowdown. So it's very concerning. If I had a highly appreciated property that I needed to sell, maybe I'm getting older, I need to make a change, but I'm realizing that I have to pay a tremendous amount of tax, I'm really going to be in a pickle. Right. And I think that we just have to continue to educate our congresspeople. So thanks, Stan, for doing that.
Sure.
And as Christina mentioned, I put those websites, the taxreform.com and 1031.org on the chat feature. And Dan, I put your cell phone number and your email. Hope you don't mind.
That's
I got
fine.
Christina Nielson's cell phone and email on the chat feature, as well as myself and SuZanne Kennedy's there as well. Christina, could I mention something on you guys mind if I mention something on the 1031 exchange? You mentioned COVID, which is interesting. With the DST sponsor puts one loan on the property. So you can absorb the debt of the DST sponsor, so you don't have to get a loan. And I know during COVID, it's somewhat difficult to get a loan right now, right? It takes a little bit longer. But also, the properties are pre-purchased, and you can do virtual property tours. So a nice way to escape the perils of COVID, if you will.
Yeah. One other comment I want to make regarding the grandfathering, because since we sent out this webinar announcement, I received a lot of emails over the last week from clients saying, I'm worried that there'll be some unraveling of my past 1031 exchange, that they will retroactive this, you know, back to 2020 or 2019. Nobody knows what will happen, but Dan, that would be rather unprecedented, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, good.
I wouldn't worry about that. I mean,
it's 2021.
You can never say never, but really, I think if there is a blue wave and the Democrats take over everything, I think you're looking at January of 2021 is when they get in this, you know, seat of power again, and then that's when we're talking about things happening. So that's what I would imagine. So
do you think? So let's just play this timeline out. If we do have this blue wave, President, Congress, Senate is all blue. Tax plan is a top priority for them to change the tax code. It took Trump a little over a year to get his in place.
Right.
Do you think it could be faster for them? So they could retroactive it back to January 2021. I think that's a realistic risk, but how likely is it that none of it really is implemented until January 2022?
That's a really good point. I think that's a realistic thing to think as well. Again, with Washington and how things work, I can't imagine that it's going to happen so quickly. And again, you have to go to the House Ways and Means and the Senate Finance and back and forth. And I mean, I think the earliest that they could do it would be September. And I think you're right. I don't think it would click in until January of 2022. But, you know, again, you never know. So this isn't a guarantee. But I mean, you know, Vice President Biden, you can Google him and there's stories he says this is his first priority. You know, who knows? It's just politics. So politics can change on a dime. You know, somebody did ask me in another call, they said, why is this happening? Why do you think he's doing it? I'm like, well, you know, it could all just be politics, and, you know, Trump is into commercial real estate and this is something for commercial real estate. So maybe it's a thing for Trump. And then after he gets in, he's going to moderate and go to the center and not do this. Your guess is as good as mine, but people sometimes want me to opine on the different political aspects of it. I mean, so it could, there's Democrats I know that say this is just politics talk, and once he wins, he's going to moderate to the center and he won't do this. So, you know, again, you just don't know. It's such an important thing in our world that I'm taking it seriously, and that's why we're educating Democrat leaders all around the country of why this is important.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. I'll hand over to Christina Nielson to wrap things up here.
Sure. Well, I thank everybody so much for taking an hour out of your day to get on this call and learn about this. And if you're concerned about this, I suggest that you reach out to your congressperson with a phone call, with an email, tell your friends. I know it's a very divisive political time. I understand that. It's a challenge to pick a candidate that's going to fit all of our requirements and desires. It's really a challenging time. But economically, I think what we've talked about on this call, there are three pretty big factors, you know, 1031, paying tax on capital gains that you haven't received, and losing the step up in basis. Those are three really big concerns in the potential Biden tax plan. And so hopefully if somehow he does get elected, that there's some wisdom and prudence that happens in Washington and those three things don't happen. So I'd like to thank our three other panelists. This has been awesome. So thank you so much, Charles Jensen of Inland, and then Dan Wagner, our political guru. Thank you so much. And then SuZanne Kennedy of First American Exchange. You have our contact information. Reach out to us. Let us know if we can help you in any way. Be well and economically prosper.
Thank you.